Hi, hello. Welcome back to Intentional Oversharing with me, your host, Neely Kimmy. As always, today I have a very special guest, my dear friend, Victoria Carrington Chávez. I'm so excited to have you here, Victoria. It's been such a gift to know you, and it was only a matter of time that I would eventually have you as a guest on this. So I'm just really glad that we're making it happen. I would love if you would introduce yourself a bit. If you can remember anything about like how we know each other, like and got to know one another, I'd love for you to share a bit about that as well. But yeah, go for it.
Yes, I am so excited to be here. And I was definitely kind of fangirling a little bit, like, what? Intentional oversharing me? Yes. And I'm so excited because it's just been a joy to watch both of us evolve over these last, I think it's been 2 years. And so I'm Victoria Carrington Chavez. I'm a TEDx speaker, a brand and narrative strategist, and I help people tell their stories authentically and unapologetically and really just kind of be the main characters in their life and on stages and digital spaces, which is really key. If you have a business or you're wanting to be a speaker, a thought leader, or, just make a difference in the world, being able to share about what you value and what's important to you is such a great skill. So I help people do that, in intentional ways. And sometimes we do overshare, which is okay.
Sometimes that's part of it, right?
It is because stories connect us. And so that's what's really cool. And I think why I was fangirling is a lot of times those of us who are neurospicy, we can be taught to feel a little shame and guilt about our ability to overshare. And the thing is what I found in my work is that genuineness, that authenticity that we just carry in sharing who we are comfortably is a gift. It's a great skill. And just learning how to read the room, which is, I mean, that's how I got a degree in communications. I was like, how do I read a room, y'all? So I studied comms to get better at that. And I think that it's been really cool to work with a lot of neurodiverse folks and sharing their stories in these intentional ways that they can still be them and overshare, but then in a way that they're not feeling like they're giving too much away or they go back and ruminate on that. I mean, I've gone back and ruminated on things before. But to get to how we met, I mean, LinkedIn, Linky. um, you had a co-working session, and I don't even know how. I think it was honestly the algorithm, because sometimes the algorithm does give you here's a cool person, and you had a co-working session, and I was solopreneuring in my business, and I was like, okay, I need somebody to work alongside with. And I had not really heard of the term co-work before. And this was just right after my ADHD diagnosis. And I was like, I'm going to go try this. And it changed. I was like, what? People do this? You could have a supportive community in your neurodiversity? What? That's not a thing. And then Neely was like, no, it's a thing. Come join us. I've felt and been a part of the community since. And I just really appreciated how open you were. And also, you lead with that authenticity. You're like, hey, my brand is weird. I'm weird. Nothing's wrong with that. And it's just been really cool to feel like I could go into this space and I didn't have to mask, and I could get the support needed to achieve the success I was seeking. That was a couple years ago, and I was really just getting started in my business. And I look back now and I'm like, oh my goodness, I am really proud of what I've been able to achieve so far.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's been so much fun to see you evolve and all of the cool stuff you're doing and meeting. We're going to be talking a lot about goals today. And I've watched you, in real time, meet some of these really exciting goals that you had when we first met. And it's just been such a cool thing to witness and get to cheer you on along the way. I love it so much. Anyway, I'm just excited to have you here and to talk about this today. So, as you and I have talked a little bit, when it comes to goals and goal setting, this is just a difficult thing for neurodivergent folks to navigate. We have a lot of internalized shame. There's a lot of expectations, pressure that can come up for a lot of us whenever it comes to talking about goals.
Mhm.
And so I just want to ask you broadly, what's your relationship in general been like with goals and goal setting?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's gotten better in the more recent years with support and education. But when I was younger, it was so challenging. And I remember being in school and my teachers. So, side note for listeners, I didn't get diagnosed until I was an adult. And so, when I was in school, a lot of those supports, maybe for neurodiverse kids, I didn't have. And so, my teachers would just be like, "You're really ambitious, Victoria. You have these big goals, but then like all of the in between drops off and you don't actually achieve as much as you potentially could." I was in the gifted and talented program, but always like just super talented and had all this potential, but just couldn't achieve things. I look back now and I'm like, oh, well, point A to point B, which is a lot for us neurodiverse folks, of I have this big goal, point B, I'm at point A, and there's like this chasm between, and that without support, something that builds that bridge, it's really hard for us to cross that chasm. And then we internalize that shame, like you said, of like, I can't achieve things. So it's really complex. It's kind of like a mind fuck. I'm super high achieving and I don't feel like I'm achieving anything at the same time. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I can super relate to that. And it's funny that you mentioned being in gifted and talented program. I had like a really just side tangent, some Neely lore for anybody who's curious. I was encouraged to skip a grade. We had like middle school and like junior high and like intermediate school in my school. So I don't remember when. It was somewhere in there. They told me to skip a grade and I was like, no, I'm not going to like smart guy myself because I remember watching Smart Guy and being
Oh.
like, I'm not going to do that to myself. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to skip a grade because that just feels like I'll be like an outsider. And they were like,
Mhm.
okay, then we encourage you to apply for the GT. We called it the GT, Gifted and Talented Program. And I applied and I did this. It was almost like an audition kind of thing. I had to like present something and I put so much effort into it. I just remember like working really hard on it. And I was the only person that didn't get picked for the GT program. And I don't know if that's because they ran out of spaces or what. They didn't tell me more details, but then they just put me in accelerated programs without like they didn't ask me if I wanted to do that or not. And so that ended up being a very weird kind of like in between. And I didn't feel like I really had the support that I should have had, even though they were like trying to make it so I wasn't bored, at least. And that was nice, I guess. But I just didn't like I didn't hang out with any of my peers. We didn't have anything in common. I just feel like I was like doomed whenever it came to school.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really common experience for a lot of us. And so it kind of leads to your question of like goal setting, where I like to say smart goals versus hard goals. And because when I learned more about hard goals, it changed my life and it changed kind of how I set goals. And so for those unfamiliar, so a lot of times smart goals is kind of the common in like leadership. We learn this in school, and SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time bound, which just reading that list, my neurodiverse brain is like, I don't get four of those things. What do you mean specific?
Yeah,
Like, what do you mean measurable? Like how do I measure it? And then the actionable, right? Like I think back to that chasm of like, okay, but like if I knew the steps, all I sometimes can really see is like point B across the
right.
chasm. Like I'm just trying to jump over there. And then the time bound, like I didn't understand how long it took me to take things. Like there was actually a period of time when I was really active in just getting my diagnosis, and I had an ADHD therapist, an ADHD coach, and I had these big like, the big sticky papers all over my house with Sharpies because I would have to time myself to understand how long it took me to do stuff because I didn't know. So like you're asking me to make a goal and then tell you how long it's going to take me to do that. I didn't know how long it was going to take me to do my dishes. Like I learned that
Right.
adult. I was like, oh, dishes actually can take this 10 minutes if I get in a routine of doing them, not 3 weeks. Like, and so I think that that part, I feel like a lot of us have had that kind of been presented of this is how you set goals. And then when we try and it doesn't work because maybe our brains are thinking of things like time, specificity, and measuring differently, then we don't achieve it. And then we like kind of get into that chasm. And like for me, that chasm is like, dang, like I'm not going to be able to achieve anything. Or how am I actually going to be successful? How am I going to actually achieve my goals? And it's like not fun in that chasm.
Right. I remember learning more about the SMART goals in college
Hmm.
specifically. So I had like a bachelor's in psychology. So I took a lot of psychology courses. They would just like drill that into us,
Cool.
SMART goals. And I will say that like the autistic part of my brain really likes it seems simplistic because it's like measurable and there's specificity with it. And so it sounds really nice in theory, but it definitely is more tailored to like a neurotypical
Hmm.
brain than it ever has been for a neurodivergent. And so hearing about it was something that I kind of carried along with me once I worked in mental health and then became a coach. I was still using this framework. And I remember you and I having like a coffee chat or something early on when we met, and you mentioned the hard goals and you told me about the video by Jessica McCabe, which I would love
Hmm.
to hear you share more about that. But it kind of gave me just knowing there were other frameworks out there. It felt like it gave me permission for myself and as a coach to be like, I can just toss the SMART goals. It's okay if that's not resonating. It's also okay if it does resonate with some clients. I know how to use it if they want to do that, but it's totally okay for me to just throw it away. So I'd
Yes.
love to hear you talk about SMART goals more. Yeah. Or sorry, hard goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yes, and in comms, similar. SMART goals is really like really pushed on you. And like college was such a wild ride, not for the like cool kids partying thing, but for the like, I would do a lot of my homework the night before. And so, yeah, like SMART goals were really pushed on us. But then I discovered a video about like maybe SMART goals aren't the goals by Just Giving Cave. And then it talked about hard goals. And what hard goals stand for is like heartfelt, animated, required, and difficult. And so it's a different type of framework to look at your goal. And so I used a TED Talk. At that point, when you and I were talking, I had this goal to give a TED Talk. And so your heartfelt part is like, why? Because a lot of times we're not always motivated by some of the neurotypical things, but something like heartfelt gives me the opportunity to say, why is this motivating me? Why do I want to do this? Like, I have this big, beautiful dream. That's what I love about us neurospicy folks is we have big, beautiful dreams. We have things that we want and we can see the world as a better place. So that heartfelt leans into the why. And that's a more motivating factor to me than like measuring some of the specificalities of it. The animated is like, how will my life feel after I achieve this goal? And I think that that's a really good framework for like visualization, for kind of really stepping into that energy, which later I'll talk about main character energy and how I kind of use this hard goal framework infused in main character energy. And then the required is thinking about like, what do I need to do or what do I need to help me stay on track with this? It was presented to me of that. I was like, oh, I like this. This is a way easier way of looking at, okay, if I want to give a TED talk, then I'm going to need to practice memorization. Okay, what do I need if memorization is challenging? What do I need? And I think it's a way easier bucket. And then the last one is like difficult. Like what obstacles will I have? How am I going to achieve them? Do I need to do some co-working sessions with people because I get distracted super easily and I know that about myself and I need to like have somebody sit with me while I sit down and write this talk. The hard goal framework is what I use to sit down and to work on my application for my TEDx, which then I got the TEDx and then spent a year working on my TEDx to deliver it in this framework. Because the thing is our goals are hard. Like the things we want to achieve, like there is hard work required. But if I go back to, and believe me, I wanted to give up more times than one. But when I went back to that heartfelt, like my why, that part kept me anchored. It was way easier to anchor me and keep me motivated over time than it was of me trying to be like, I'll achieve this in 6 months. And then I don't achieve it. Then it takes me 6 years to get out of that. Somebody once asked me, why did it take me 15 years to give a TED talk? I really believe it's because that last year is when I started using the hard framework.
Yes. The difficult, the D in hard, stands out to me because you mentioned how that is kind of referencing the fact that we are going to run into obstacles along the way. And it also gives us a chance to consider what we would do if and when we do run into those obstacles. So we have a game plan in place. But then what
Mhm,
also stands out to me about that part of it as well is that we have big, like lofty, ambitious goals a
mhm,
lot of the times. First of all, I also want to say if you don't have those, that's totally okay. Like we're generalizing here, but if people are listening and their goals aren't aligned like that, that's also fine. Like you're still totally worthy of like a gentle, like loving life. But with a lot of us, we have like these really big exciting goals that other people might hear and be like, "Oh, that's not realistic." You need
mhm,
to bring it down to earth a little bit. And
mhm.
so I think of difficult and I'm like, also the goals themselves are difficult to achieve, and a lot of times we respond better to things being challenging
Mhm.
and pulling us out of our comfort zone in order for them to even be worth it.
Yeah. It keeps the like dopamine hits like of this is
Mhm.
challenging. This is pushing me outside of my comfort zone into a different direction. And and to kind of note about the lofty goals, to us, our goals, whether big or small, that's subjective. They're important and meaningful to us. And I think that that's why I like that framework of like heartfeltness, because maybe your goal is you just want to be able to share or make a meal for somebody, right? But to you, that feels just as big as me saying, I want to give a TED talk. And I think that that's what's cool about this framework and where SMART gave me a lot of challenges because that specific and measurable still kind of felt like judgments. Whereas of hard, kind of that framework feels like I can take ownership of it. Cause me making a meal, if I don't know how to cook for somebody, that same feeling I'm gonna feel like I got a standing ovation. Like I'm gonna feel like a badass after that. And so that's what I like about this framework. It can work with just about any size of goal because it all is relevant to the person making that goal.
I love that. I just really love that you like framed it in that way because that's such a good point. Like it's important to me that people aren't feeling like
Mhm.
when we're talking about these goals, it has to be something like a TED Talk because that's like, that sounds like scary to me. But also, like a year ago, having a podcast or being on video, making video content was scary to me. And for some people, that's like second nature. They do it all the time. So, yeah, it's very relative. And your goals, no matter what they look like, are if it's something that feels like it's going to feed you in some way, it's worth it. It's worth it
Abs-
to pursue that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the other reason, like, and it sounds and that's a judgment. Sometimes I'll say it sounds silly, but like when I first heard the word hard goals, I was like, yes, making goals is hard. I was like, I want to learn more about this because it's hard. But then doing laundry is a chore that is hard for me. And I used to have so much shame in that. But then, like, going on podcasts is that feels a little bit easier. And so the other piece that this framework and kind of working with this in goal setting or looking at my life or the things that I want to achieve is it's kind of helped me look at things in a different perspective and give myself a little bit of grace, right? Because to neurotypical people, sometimes something like laundry is not like, and I don't know anybody who's really like, I love doing that, but maybe they're not facing the same challenges to where like kind of just being vulnerable here. So I used to actually buy clothes as opposed to washing them because washing clothes felt hard. And so there was a period of my life where I just had this overflow of closet. And I mean, of course, I did laundry, but then what ended up happening is when I started my own business and I was able to afford a wash and fold service, and I felt so much shame about that. Like, oh my gosh, like you can't do that, so bougie. But really, what my therapist was like, no, put that in self care. Because the other piece with this is like this kind of framework helped me look at other obstacles and challenges. If what was difficult was I would get so overwhelmed by doing the laundry that I wouldn't sit down and write my TED talk, and then I would feel this overwhelmance of things in my closet. Okay, so getting support for that, that's a good thing. That's a step towards like it's important, it's valid, and like you're worthy and deserving of that. I actually that's what my therapist would tell me. And I started putting it in my self-care list just like I would, medication or groceries or just these kind of vital things. Now I don't have the same problem because I currently live out of like two suitcases. So like it's just like it's way easier and it's way more manageable when you have less clothes. But I don't know why that felt really important to share. In all honesty, like really vulnerable because I think those are sometimes the spaces of my ADHD that I don't always share. Like people see the success and they see the impact that I make, but don't always see sometimes the behind the scenes where I'm struggling and with something that is to some as simple as laundry.
Yes, it's such an important piece to this conversation because, like, when we're talking about ADHD or neurodiversity or neurodivergence in general, there's usually executive dysfunction that comes with that in some way, shape, or form. It can be different depending on the day. It can be different, like, throughout our lives. That can shift and change the way that that looks. But it's like, it's interesting because a lot of us have these really amazing capabilities that maybe another person or a neurotypical person might be like, wow, like they were able to do a TED talk, for example, or they were able to write a book or something like that. And if we think about like our day to day lives and the stuff that we might be struggling with on a regular basis, it's hard for us to even recognize and give ourselves credit for the big things we do because we're like, oh, brushing my teeth is hard. Or
Oh,
like, I feel like with the example of laundry, I also really struggle. There's a lot of reasons why I struggle with keeping up with laundry. And I lean a lot on I'm lucky enough to lean a lot on my wife to help pick up the slack with that. But then like with things like going grocery shopping, that's like such being at the grocery store is a huge trigger for me. I started like having panic attacks
yeah.
before COVID happened whenever I would go to the grocery store. And then whenever COVID happened and it started to become normalized for us to order groceries or to do like curbside pickup, and it's usually like a pretty affordable cost. Like,
Mhm.
and I go to HEB, so like shout out to HEB in Texas. It's usually free to get like curbside pickup, which is amazing. My wife doesn't have the same issues with grocery shopping, which is great for her. I had to like do a lot of work on
Mhm.
myself with like accepting that that is a supportive tool for
Right.
me. I felt a lot of shame about it as well. So, yeah, I wanted to give another example of that because these are just things that I've accepted that I struggle with, and
Mhm.
forcing it or pushing myself to do it in a neurotypical way doesn't feel supportive to me. So these are other options that we have at our disposal.
Yeah. And I love that we're talking about this in the space of this conversation of like goal setting. I too had been doing the curbside pickup, and I was like, I didn't know there was an option. And I think that's so much because when we look at like all of these different obstacles that we might have, sometimes it is the day to day, it is the overwhelmance. Because if I am doing something like laundry or grocery shopping that is overwhelming and overstimulating, and I have used all of my spoons. If you're not familiar with spoon theory, I can send a link for that. But I've used all my spoons and I have none left, then how am I going to put that into this like goal, this like dream, this desire? And so by accepting the support, which I think that sometimes there is that shame that we feel or other people's opinions that come in about accepting support for something that seems easy for neurotypical people or not the same challenges or just like what you're supposed to be doing to and when we accept the support, we take the judgment out of it, it actually frees up so much space and energy for the things we really want to do in life, the things that really excite us and animate us, kind of help fulfill us in a way. And that's a way that I've looked at it. And I've spent a lot of time working on releasing that shame and that guilt and recognizing that this is my life and like I deserve to live a happy life, a life that is abundant, beautiful, and meaningful and fulfilling to me, i.e., I get to be the main character in my story.
Yes, yes, exactly. And also, just I want to highlight the fact that, like, in your example with the laundry, over time, so something too with like autistic rigidity is that we might have like a made up rule in our head, or we might have been conditioned to think, oh, if I start to give myself the space to lean into external support in this way, then I'm enabling myself to like never build up a tolerance for
Hmm.
these things. But the reality, and if that's the case, that's also okay. Like in my example, I keep going back to doing grocery store, like curbside pickup. I know I can lean into that if I am not feeling like going to the grocery store. And if that doesn't ever change for me, I've accepted that. But in your example, you've been able to adapt your life around that in such a way to where you don't need that same external support. It's not like you have to do that forever. If it's
Hmm.
something that helps you in the moment and it's supportive for you for a period of time, it's worth it if you have the means to engage in that. So I think, like, just a reminder to any autistic folks that are listening that are like, oh, but I can't do that because then I'll never do my own laundry again, or I'll never do my own groceries again. That's not necessarily the case. Like, you change and evolve just like anybody else. That can also change and evolve with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if anything, it helped me, build that runway, like kind of going back to that chasm analogy. Like a lot of times in some of these, like setting goals or just wanting to be better at something or move towards something that will fulfill us, we do feel that chasm, but like those steps, those support, like that all kind of builds the bridge across. And then we get to decide what we do with that new information. Do we want to keep using the support? Do we want to shift it? But we know that it's there if we ever need. I had mentioned so like right now I am on a cross country road trip, which was a big goal of mine. So it's, talking about lofty goals like outside of a TED talk and something you need to plan for and prepare for, which is not always something my neurodiversity, my ADHD side is like, all right, let's go. Like my autistic side is like, let's plan every single detail, every single moment of every single day. And then they fight. Because
Yes.
like a road trip, it's also where I see that strength of kind of both of them and integrating both those sides. Cause like I do have to plan to some degree, But I also, when I give myself space to like kind of wander and explore, then it becomes really beautiful. Like many times we, like you said, can have that rigidness of it's going to be this way forever. And leaning more for me into that, it's like this today. It can change, it can shift because that's life, really helps me make that assessment for the moment, the time, and the thing that I'm having. Then things become more achievable. When I started this road trip, it was meant to be 5 months. I did not know if it would work out. I was super hopeful. I'm still really hopeful, but I would just sometimes have to tell myself mile by mile or pasito a pasito, which is baby step, baby step. And then from there, I got to kind of enjoy the journey of it. And I think that that's what I lean more towards, like the hard goals versus the smart goals, or even just the goals. Cause like society will focus on the destination, i.e., I achieve the thing. I found joy in the journey of it. Because it seems like when you have a really good party and then like it's over, like that's sometimes what that achievement feels like. And then you're like, okay, well, now what?
Mhm.
And so that's why I kind of also like the what would my life look like or what would it feel like? And to kind of dream into that, but enjoy that process of it. Cause I don't know. I mean, I feel like it is changing, it's ever evolving. And that's like that's life.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense, and I think that that ties into a lot of what I focus on for my business, for building it, and for trying to grow like my audience. And then also what I try to impart onto my clients typically is like, if there are lots of things that you are doing in your day to day life that are bringing up friction or that you
Mhm.
just hate doing. Like you dread doing it. You like there's like little things that are just draining your energy. Are there ways that those things can be like eliminated or make them fun in some way, more enjoyable in some way? And I think that like, well, not everything can be like fun and games, Neely. And I'm like, I don't know. That sounds like capitalism and toxic productivity is like talking through you because we can make things fun, even things that suck. We can like body double when we're doing laundry. And that's why I do these body doubling sessions, like in general, is it just makes it a little bit more fun. It adds a little bit more like interest and novelty and support to boring, less than exciting tasks. And why can't we enjoy those things? What's wrong with that?
That part, why can't we enjoy those things? So my background is in comms and linguistics. I've also been in my coaching adding and practicing and learning more about some psychology, which was a base of some of the comms that I had originally started. And what I've started to realize is there are psychological things that happen when we invite play or when we invite that like exploration. The slang word is delulu until it's Lulu. And that's another way I found myself achieving some of these big goals is to tap into the like delusion of it and have fun with it. So what I've done is what I call like main character energy. And this is actually backed in psychology. It's called the Batman effect. And i.e. like tap into an alter ego, tap into a persona, a character, somebody that would have the energy to complete the task that you're feeling an obstacle with. And so, an example I like to give is like for a lot of times, I wanted to be able to solo travel. And last year, I flew like 35,000 miles, which is wild to me. Portions of that were solo, but I get overstimulated in airports, y'all. Like, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of moving parts. I didn't know if I would be able to do it. And so I took on the persona of Carmen San Diego because I was like, how do I make this fun? Okay, I'm going to pretend to be Carmen San Diego. And what that did over time is that built confidence while I was in that kind of in between, but it also helped me like have fun with my goal. So I grew up loving Carmen San Diego, and I'm also sitting there thinking, like, I'm in an airport, like I'm overstimulated. I don't know where to go. And I was like, would Carmen San Diego cry right now? And if you want to cry, you can cry. But you also can tap into that part of you that would just be like, okay, how am I going to pretend to be this character and get the thing done that feels really challenging? And honestly, I started having a lot of fun with it. That now this is what I when I help clients do. We create characters we that are based upon the characters that resonate with us, but also help us be that main character in our own story. I didn't want my mind or other people's opinions stop me from doing something that I felt called to do, like travel the world. Yeah.
Yes.
Neely, who would your alter ego be?
It's interesting you ask that. I think it would definitely depend on the situation. And this is also just like bringing up for me something that I try to talk about pretty often. Masking in general is a very common thing that we learn to do as neurodivergent folks.
Hmm.
And we do that to protect ourselves. Yes, there's a lot of talk in like the neurodiversity industry about unmasking. And yes, masking can be very taxing on us and it can be really exhausting and lead to burnout and things. But we can also use it to our advantage, whether that's a way to protect ourselves or a way for us to help achieve our goals. What you're describing feels like a more intentional, like
Hmm.
healthier way of using a skill that we naturally learn that can be detrimental to us, but in a way that feels more like fulfilling and supportive that serves you. Over the past weekend, quick tangent, there's always tangents on this podcast. So no surprise there. But over the past weekend, I was part of a Christmas parade. I volunteer for some local queer pride organizations, like nonprofits in my area, and it's a pretty like rural area. So that's a really cool thing that I get to take part in. And so our organization had our own float. And I noticed there were like tons of people out for this parade. It's a big thing out here. And so I was like getting anxious and like overstimulated by interacting with people. But there were other people around that were part of our group that were into that. They were like able to get into interacting and like handing stuff to people and talking to people and stuff. I wasn't feeling that at the moment. But so I was like, well, I'm just going to like wave and be like another body as part of this and just like say hi to people from a distance. And that felt better to me. But it's funny because as I was doing that, I started to kind of my confidence was building because I was not forcing myself to do the stuff that felt really
Mhm.
uncomfy for me. And
Mhm.
I turned to my friend at one point and I was like, it's so cool that everybody, these thousands of people came out just for me. And I was making jokes about how, like, oh, this is my parade. And then I was like, kind of acting like a princess or something. And it was that just like made it a lot more fun for me. Like, I definitely embodied that like main character energy to just make it more enjoyable.
It's meant to be fun. You took that moment. And a note about main character energy too is it's not necessarily about look at me, look at me. It's about I know myself well enough and I'm willing to take care of myself and do what I need to do for me regardless of the external circumstance. It's not self-centered, but it's about like that clarity and self-assurance. And with that, like you did, right? You're like, "Hey, I'm just going to wave at people and I'm going to pretend to be like this persona and it's just going to help me through." And the thing is we do this when we're kids. Like it's naturally inherent in us. If you kids love to pretend to be different characters and also they have that assurance and clarity. I know you're familiar with my brand, The Story Saloon, and some of that comes a little bit of Victoria lore. As a kid, I wanted to be a cowgirl. Like when people are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said cowgirl. And the thing is I didn't necessarily grow up on a ranch. I'm pretty sure I saw like a TV show or something and I was like, that's me. I feel that. Like I'm gonna be that. How often though as adults, we're taught like, or we say something and we get judgment, other people's judgment. And so I just love when we can kind of get back into that character and use that ability to kind of master embody different energies and personas and styles to help us get through life because that's something kids do. It's been a way to like find the joy, the fun in it, imagination, play. I do have to give the disclaimer. I do not know how to play this game. It is on my 2026 list out there to learn D&D and finally like have a group. I know I have friends that are super into it and are like DMs, but something I appreciate about like D&D or video games is they have stories and characters that teach us how to solve or navigate through problems. And we're going to have problems in life. That is the unfortunate nature of it. But if we can find ways to tap into a fun, a joy while we're kind of moving through it, it can make that pain feel different or that challenge feel different. And that's why I think I love those type of games because they're showing those things in real time.
Yes, I I feel similarly about the D&D stuff. Like it's so cool and I'm like happy for people that do it. I think that I've been in so many situations with games in general where I struggle to like learn the rules. The issue is that those times have happened whenever I'm around people that will get frustrated with me about that. So like
Mhm.
I've been kind of conditioned to be like, oh, that's something to feel shame about. If you
Mhm.
don't like take the time to learn how things work, if you're not very stringent about following the rules throughout the game, then people are going to be upset with you. And it's like, I thought we were supposed to be doing this for fun. And you're taking the fun out of it for me because that's not the way that I learn and that's not the way that I operate in general. And so I feel like the cool part about D&D is there is a lot of space to like experiment
Mhm.
and like learn as you go. There's a person who's in charge who like is keeping track of things so you don't have to keep track of them and you can kind of let them take over. And so it's something I've also been really curious about exploring. All of the intricacies are what make me scared of it.
There are intricacies. Our friend Taj, shout out Taj, does D&D and has spoken about that. And I mean, I also love how like it has a character and you get to create that character and what strengths does that character have. I don't always love the word weaknesses, but like what obstacles or challenges or what are going to be the things that maybe throw that character off balance. And that's also how I kind of like think about in my life like and I'm learning every day what are going to be the things that maybe would throw me off balance. And for the things that I can anticipate, meals like so I am a Taurus. I have to eat or I get like gremlin level hangry. But then I also sometimes with my neurodiversity forget to eat. And so kind of knowing like, oh, I need to make sure to eat this character, this, you know, body needs to eat. I can then plan time in that, or I can plan, okay, you need a lunch break and then start to build routines around that. So it's been a fun way to kind of be like, how do I care for myself? How do I support myself? How do I celebrate myself? How do I move through even just difficult moments? And what are the things that resonate with me? I just always think back to like when I was a kid, also recognizing that everybody's childhood is a little different. There might be parts of that we don't always remember, but thinking to that point where we'd be like, oh, this book or this character, or like I'm this one. I recognize that a lot of times the things that resonate with us is because we see something in ourselves that we genuinely like. And so it's been fun to explore with clients like what that means or what that value is. Going back to my Carmen San Diego analogy, I really liked Carmen San Diego because she was always one step ahead. She didn't second guess herself. She didn't doubt herself. Victoria doubts herself a lot. And so I think that it's always good to remind ourselves like there's probably something either we want to be or that's in us. But the thing is as much as I can say Victoria doubts herself, if clients come to me because they're like, wow, you seem so confident and so clear in who you are. And a lot of times we don't always get to see ourselves the way others see us. It's the kind of awe of it. And it's a really long-winded way of saying we're all just trying to figure it out. like, like we're all figuring it out. Like nobody has it all together. And if they do, they are probably lying to someone.
Yeah. And if you just had been like born with this like next level confidence and had never struggled with your own confidence in yourself, then you wouldn't have the same kind of insight to provide to
Mhm.
clients about navigating that journey. And the fact that like you're still in those ways, we're still like works in progress. It's not a linear thing. It's not like now I'm the cowgirl or I'm the Carmen Sandiego of my life and I embody that all the time. There are times when we're going to not feel as confident, even though we've done a lot of work on that. And I just have found that the more open I am about my own struggles with these kinds of things, the more it resonates with
Mm.
the people who need to hear that it's not just all like puppies and rainbows all the time.
No, no. It goes back to kind of the framework of why am I doing this? Why is this important? Confidence requires courage. And I see that any of us who have felt outside the box in any way, neurodiverse, queer, BIPOC, any of that, confidence to like be clear and who you are and to trust yourself, to believe in yourself, to be self-assured requires courage, and we have to consistently practice that. I mean, look, Drag Race, like that is a place where you will see assuredness and confidence and practice of like this is who I am. You can't tell me nothing. And I feel like so much of the work that I do with clients has been kind of walking back to that truth within themselves, and it's a practice because unfortunately this world will try to shake our confidence if we were outside the box, and the reality is we were not meant to fit in the box. That's why we're like magical and wonderful and weird and wild and the woo, because we are outside that status quo. And so we get to kind of celebrate each other, accept each other, and remind each other how like badass we are. Thank you for coming to my second TED Talk.
Yes, yes, exactly. I love it so much. Okay, so I wanted to like ask another question about the just with the goal stuff in general. You already spoke a little bit about this in terms of you were striving to do a TED Talk and like one of your goals had been to do a TED Talk for 15 years.
Mhm.
And once you found this hard goals framework, it kind of like turbocharged your process a bit. And something that I've found a lot of neurodivergent folks struggle with, me included, is deadlines. And I've noticed that with the hard goals framework, that's not so much a focus. And so I'm wondering just like how you've noticed the way that you conceptualize, like, what if there is a deadline to meet the goal that you want? Or like, how do you deal with the time aspect of all of that?
For me, that time aspect falls into the R. Like, what do I need to do to stay on track? If there are measurable deliverables, and so, for example, with the TED, we had certain days that we had to have our reviews, our drafts, our practices. So that is when I sometimes will phone a friend, but also lean into that calendar planning, lean into that other side. This is one of those keys of why knowing ourselves is so important. For me, I find that that last minute deadline stuff is something that inspires me to get things done. So I have to play tricks and give myself that last minute deadline, generally 3 to 4 days before the actual deadline. But I don't change it in my calendar. I really say, this is the day. Community, like you offered body doubling session, like all of those different tools to help you stay on track. And then for me, I am such a gold star girly. Like I have to also incentivize it or like pair it with something fun. But the thing is really sitting down with yourself and saying that rut is required. That's when we really dig deep and say, okay, if you have this big, like really, what do you have to do? What are those like kind of really tangible pieces? And list them out. I think sometimes the first step is just really listing them out and then going from there. And I have a friend who does the energy equation, Aicila Lewis, and she is on LinkedIn. And she's actually helped me a lot with this. A lot of her work, her methods work with a lot of neurodiverse people because it speaks in energy. So something she's helped me do is, okay, so I made this big list of all these things required. Which ones like which ones get a happy face? Which ones do I like doing? And which ones get a sad face? Which ones are like, nope, nope, I don't want to do that. Those are the ones that I have to phone a friend or like reach out for support or realize I cannot do those on my own. When I do them with support, I get a gold star. It doesn't matter what that incentive is, but it's just it's actually changing the neural pathways, especially with having not having support or not have kind of achieving goals. It just trains my neural pathway to be like, nope, you did a good job. You got something done on time and you can celebrate that with a shiny something.
Yes. Yeah, and I really appreciate that you like in answering that question you gave like multiple tools that you lean on that work for you personally. And those might look different for different people. And that's totally fine. It's not that folks listening need to use the exact same tools or supports that Victoria uses or that I use. Or maybe you can't access those and you have to get creative. That's totally fine. That's part of it too. But yeah, and sometimes like you might need to lean into one thing in a certain way as opposed to leaning into something else. Like something that I'm exploring for myself right now is outsourcing those like friction
Mm,
causing tasks with my business. I feel like I'm in a place where I feel like rooted, like grounded enough in my business and I know enough about like what I'm doing and how I want to operate where now I can like lean into my friends and my
mhm.
community and like I've realized and accepted I hate editing videos.
Yep.
You know what? That's okay. Other people don't mind doing it. I'm going to just let them handle it. And
Yes.
that's going to make my life so much easier. And I won't just constantly be trying to like force it and make it happen anyway. It hasn't been working. And that's okay. That's okay. I'm leaning into my supports and my people. And I've already tried all the things to try to make it more interesting and fun for me to do myself. And I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I love that there's like that show, it was like a game show, what is it? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And it was like if you got stuck on something, you had a lifeline, but you had three different lifelines. I think that was the part that was interesting to me
Yeah.
because you might be stuck on something, but that you might require a different lifeline for each of those different things that you're stuck on. But I feel like something that to celebrate for us is just when you recognize like, oh, I need a lifeline and because we don't always know that, but then when we do and we lean into it, we're like, oh, I deserve a life of ease. Because I think it's so funny. We're talking about hard goals and things that are difficult, but also bringing in more ease. Like, I did not realize that I could access ease. I think when you are neurodiverse and you're living in a neurotypical world, so much can feel so overwhelming that like you're like, wait, ease is an option. And so what you're saying, I love how you talked about like I'm clear on the, like I don't want to edit, like I'm gonna phone in a friend, you know, me talking about like using some of these frameworks, or friends are offloading that and being like, hey, like, or can you do this with me, is creating a life of ease. I work hard, but I work so much smarter, which is so interesting to play it. Like my my like linguistic nerd brain is like, oh my gosh, we talked about SMART goals. And now I'm gonna like kind of wrap this up with like work smarter, not harder. But I really need like maybe try hard goals, and if SMART goals, like pick what works for you. Like is it, life is can be a really beautiful thing. Choose your own adventure out here. And yeah, I'm geeking out about that. So
Yes, I mean, full circle, right? And it really does like highlight that whatever works for you is the way to go. Like truly, if like listening to this, you're like the hard goals thing just isn't resonating. Maybe this solidified for you that SMART goals are the way to go for you.
you
Wonderful. Like
yeah,
that's great. Whatever like actually works and makes your life easier is genuinely the way to go.
that's in business, right? People are like, I use this tool, I use this tool, I use this tool. And like people like swear by their tools. But the reality is you can build your own toolbox. Like it is going to be the one that works for you. Like I have some janky things. Like I still use Google Calendar tasks. And it's
Same.
like, I'm just like, it's so, and people are like, but I have Asana or this. And I was like, I tried them all. It didn't work. And I was always like, it's the one that works for you is going to be like, to your point, Neely, like, using all of these pieces to help create a base and create a start point, a finish line, and then it's a big old adventure map in between. But just keep going. And I feel like the last thing that I'll say is like, another thing that I use to really help me achieve goals is tapping into that hasn't been said yet, is tapping into creativity. And so I like to make like vision boards or collages or like word board. And there's so many different ways you can create this. But I think that there's something to be said about when we sit and we create for the sake of creating and for our joy and for bringing something, you know, like fulfilling into our life. Like there's just something really magical that can happen with that. And you don't have to like have it all figured out. Just enjoy the process of moving through, like enjoy the journey, because you'll reach the destination
Yes.
or that way.
Yes. And it won't be just miserable the whole time, like just to reach it. There was actually like something pulling you and keeping you going the whole time. I love it so much. Thank you so much for this conversation, Victoria. I knew it would be great. And I just really appreciate your time and having you on here and all of your insights. I would love to give you a chance to share anything that you want to plug. There's going to be like some links and stuff of things that we've talked about throughout this call in the description below and ways to follow along with Victoria's journey. But yeah, anything you want to plug or anything before we wrap?
Yeah, so certainly follow me on LinkedIn, Victoria Carrington Chávez, and Instagram, as well as please subscribe to the Story Saloon. I'm getting ready to share some really cool stories of the road trip we have crossed over 10,000 miles on this solo cross country road trip. And then the last thing I really want to plug is I'm having a main character energy cohort starting again in February. I've done 2 already. People are seeing some really cool results. Like actually one of my clients did get a TED Talk that had done the main character energy cohort. So just if you really resonate with today and you're like, hey, I want to learn how to be stronger in my main character energy in my life, like please look for the cohort and we'd love to have you.
Yay! Awesome. I'm so excited for you and all the cool stuff that you're doing. Thank you again so much for being here, Victoria.
You, Neely. This was
Sweet.
so fun. I so bad, and I have my
Yes.
calls. Yes, like this was so fun. I appreciate you. I adore you. Thank you for all the authentic, kind, badass ways that you show up and that you support community. It's an honor.
Thank you to you too. Awesome. Bye, everybody.